Commander Day stared at the empty space ahead of his ship. The stars looked peaceful out here, far from Earth and far from trouble. His ship, the UHNS Resolute, was on a simple patrol mission near the edge of Coalition space. Nothing exciting ever happened on these routes. That was fine with Day. After growing up on Earth, he appreciated boring. "Commander, we're picking up something," Navigator Jin said from her station. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "It's a distress signal. Coalition frequency." Day sat up straighter in his chair. "Put it through." The bridge filled with a desperate voice. It was high-pitched and watery, the kind of sound the Velnar species made. "This is colony ship Gentle Current. We are under attack. Krell pirates have surrounded us. We have 40,000 civilians aboard. Please, anyone. We need help immediately." The message repeated. In the background, Day could hear screams and the sound of explosions. Chief Engineer Yu looked up from her station. "Commander, I'm checking the Coalition database. The nearest response fleet is 6 days away." 6 days? Weapons Officer Tay shook his head. "They don't have 6 hours from the sound of it." Medical Officer Hay pulled up the Velnar file on her screen. The Velnar are a peaceful species. They come from a water world with very low gravity. They have no weapons, no shields worth mentioning. Against Krell pirates, they're helpless. Day knew about the Krell. They were a confederation of different species who turned to piracy. They were brutal and efficient. They took what they wanted and left nothing behind. "How far are we from their position?" Day asked. Jin ran the calculations. 3 hours at maximum speed. "But Commander, there's a problem. The Krell have 12 warships surrounding the Velnar colony ship. We're just one mid-range vessel. Coalition protocols say we should avoid engagement when outnumbered more than 3 to 1. Day looked at the faces of his crew. They were all human, all from Earth. Earth, the planet that the rest of the galaxy called a Class 9 death world. Most aliens couldn't even visit Earth without special equipment. The gravity would crush them. The weather would kill them. The diseases would end them. Humans grew up fighting to survive every single day. That changed a person. "You, how fast can we get there?" Day asked. "If I push the engines to combat acceleration, 2.5 hours. But Commander, the crew will have to endure 8 Gs the entire way. Most Coalition species would die from that." Day smiled without humor. "Good thing we're not most species. Jin, plot the course. Tay, start warming up all weapon systems. Hey, prepare the medical bay for Velnar refugees. We're going in." "Sir, 12 to 1 odds," Tay reminded him. "I know how to count, Lieutenant. But here's what those Krell don't know. We're from Earth. We don't know when to quit." Day opened a channel to Earth Military Command. "This is Commander Day of the Resolute. We are responding to a civilian distress call, requesting immediate backup. I'm sending our coordinates." The response came back quickly. Admiral Raw's face appeared on the screen. She was an older woman with sharp eyes and gray hair. "Commander Day, I see the situation. Hold the line. The shock fleet is coming. 14 hours. "Understood, Admiral. We'll be here." The crew strapped into their acceleration couches. Yu pushed the engines to their limits. The ship leaped forward like a hunting animal. The gravity inside increased to 8 times Earth normal. For most species in the galaxy, this would be instant death. For humans, it was painful but survivable. Day felt his body pressed deep into his chair. Breathing was hard. Moving was harder. But his mind stayed clear. Every human trained for high-G combat from the time they joined the military. Earth's gravity was already higher than most planets. Humans were built for this. 2.5 hours later, the Resolute dropped out of high speed near the battlefield. What Day saw made his jaw tighten. The Velnar colony ship was massive but defenseless. It looked more like a floating city than a warship. Around it, 12 Krell destroyers circled like sharks. Parts of the colony ship were already on fire. Bodies floated in space. "Tay, I need target locks on all 12 ships immediately." "Jin, I want a flight path that takes us right through their formation." "You, divert all non-essential power to shields." "Through their formation, sir?" Jin asked. straight through, at full combat speed. We need to break their attack pattern and get their attention off the civilians. His crew worked without further questions. They knew what he was asking. It was dangerous and possibly suicidal. But it might work. The Resolute accelerated directly toward the Krell fleet. Day opened all communication channels. This is the United Human Naval Ship Resolute to all vessels. Hostilities against civilians will cease immediately. Human reinforcements are en route. This is your only warning. The Krell commander responded with laughter. One human ship against 12 of ours? You're either very brave or very stupid. Why not both? Day said. Tay, fire everything. The Resolute plunged into the Krell formation like a missile. Its weapons blazed from every angle. Missiles streaked out. Energy beams cut through space. The human ship twisted and turned in ways that would have torn apart most vessels. The crew handled the violent movements without losing consciousness. The Krell were caught completely off guard. They expected coalition tactics, which meant careful positioning and calculated strikes. They didn't expect a single ship to attack 12 of them head-on. The Resolute's shields flashed and sparked as Krell weapons hit them. Alarms blared across the bridge. But Day kept the ship moving, never staying in one place long enough for the Krell to focus their fire. We got one, Tay shouted. A Krell destroyer exploded as a lucky shot hit its reactor. But the odds were still bad. More Krell ships were turning their full attention to the Resolute now. The shields were dropping fast. Day needed to buy time, 14 hours of time, until the shock fleet arrived. All crew, this is the commander. We're going to Protocol Deathworld. Secure all stations for extended combat. We hold this line until help arrives or until we can't anymore. Protocol Deathworld meant the ship would become a weapon itself if necessary. It meant fighting past the point where other species would surrender. It meant showing the galaxy what humans were capable of when they decided something was worth protecting. The Velnar were worth protecting. Those 40,000 civilians were worth protecting. That's what Day believed. That's what his crew believed. The battle had only just begun. The Resolute shook violently as another Krell blast hit its shields. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge. Commander Day gripped his chair and watched the tactical display. 11 Krell ships now surrounded his vessel. They had destroyed one, but that still left terrible odds. Shields at 40%, Tay reported. We can't take much more of this. Then we make sure they can't either, Day said. I need you to do something crazy. Can we vent atmosphere from the damaged sections and use it as thrust? Chief Engineer Yu stared at him for a moment. Then she smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. That's insane. Most species would never deliberately expose parts of their ship to vacuum. We're not most species. Can you do it? Give me 5 minutes. Yu's fingers flew across her control panel. I'll route all power from life support in sections 7 through 12 to the forward weapons array. We'll use the venting atmosphere to give us a boost away from their firing solution. Navigator Jin pulled up the Velnar colony ship on her screen. Commander, the Velnar are asking if they should try to run. Their engines are damaged but still functional. Tell them to stay exactly where they are. If they move, the Krell will chase them down easily. We're their shield now. The Resolute's maneuvering thrusters fired. The ship spun in a way that would have made most alien crews pass out from the G-forces. Humans felt the pressure, felt their vision narrow and their bodies scream in protest, but they stayed conscious. They stayed functional. A message came in from the Velnar ship. Human vessel, we are detecting survivors from damaged sections of our ship. Can you recover them? Medical Officer Hay looked at Day. We have space in our medical bay, but bringing them aboard during combat is risky. Do it, Day ordered. That's why we're here. The Resolute moved closer to the Velnar colony ship while still fighting off the Krell. A small rescue shuttle launched from the human vessel. Inside, 3 crew members in full combat suits flew toward the floating Velnar survivors. Hai prepared the medical bay. When the first Velnar came aboard, she understood the challenge immediately. The Velnar were delicate creatures. They looked almost like tall, thin seals with long webbed fingers. Their skin was always wet. Their large eyes were designed for seeing underwater. The gravity, one Velnar gasped. It's crushing me. Hay quickly adjusted the medical bay's gravity generators. She brought it down to 1/4 Earth normal. The Velnar could breathe easier, but they still looked terrified. You're safe now, Hai said gently. She tried to touch the Velnar's arm to reassure them, but even her light touch made them flinch. Humans were so much stronger. I'm going to treat your injuries. This might feel strange to you. Why do you live in such violent conditions? A young Velnar asked. The child's voice was high and scared. The gravity, the pressure, the temperature. It's all so extreme. Hay paused while applying medical gel to a wound. How could she explain Earth to someone from a gentle water world? This is normal for us, she finally said. Our planet taught us to be tough, but it also taught us to help others who need it. On the bridge, the battle continued. The Krell were getting smarter. They stopped trying to surround the Resolute and instead worked in coordinated strikes. 3 ships would fire while the others repositioned. Commander, the Krell leader is hailing us, Jin said. Put him through. A large armored face appeared on the screen. Commander Vex of the Krell fleet had 4 eyes and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. Human Commander, you fight well for prey. But you must see this is pointless. Surrender, and we'll let you leave. The Velnar are our target, not you. The Velnar are under our protection now, Day said calmly. You can't protect them. Look at your shields. Look at your weapons. You're dying slowly. Your reinforcements won't arrive in time. Why throw away your life for strangers? Day leaned forward. Because that's what civilized beings do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. Vex laughed. You call us uncivilized? You're from a death world. Your planet is a nightmare of violence and death. You're barely better than animals. Maybe, Day admitted, but this animal has teeth, and I'm not done biting yet. He cut the transmission. Tay, status on weapons? Forward guns are overheating. Missile tubes 3 and 5 are jammed. We're down to 60% combat effectiveness. Then we need to be creative. Prepare escape pods. The crew looked at him in confusion. Sir, we're not abandoning ship, are we? Jin asked. No. We're weaponizing the pods. Load them with all the spare reactor cores and explosives we have. Set them on collision courses with the nearest Krell ships. Make them remote-controlled. You understood immediately. You want to turn our life-saving equipment into missiles. Desperate times. Do it. 10 minutes later, 6 escape pods launched from the Resolute. The Krell initially ignored them, thinking the humans were abandoning ship. By the time they realized the pods were weapons, it was too late. 2 pods struck Krell destroyers. The explosions were massive. 2 more Krell ships were heavily damaged and forced to retreat. The remaining Krell fleet was down to 7 vessels, but the cost was high. The Resolute had used its escape pods, meaning the crew now had no way to abandon ship if things went completely wrong. They had committed themselves fully to this fight. Shields at 23%, Tay reported. His voice was steady, but Day could see the tension in his shoulders. How long until the shock fleet arrives? Day asked. Jin checked her chronometer. 11 hours and 40 minutes. 11 hours. They needed to survive for 11 more hours against 7 Krell warships. The Resolute was badly damaged, the crew was exhausted, but they were still fighting. Another transmission came through, this time from Admiral Ra on Earth. Commander Day, we're seeing your battle data. The shock fleet is pushing the engines beyond safe limits. We'll be there as fast as physically possible. Understood, Admiral. We'll be here. Day, Admiral Ra's voice softened slightly. What you're doing matters. Hold the line. Yes, ma'am. The next wave of Krell attacks came harder. They had learned to respect the human ship. They no longer treated it as a simple obstacle. Now they coordinated their fire carefully, working to overwhelm the Resolute's defenses. The ship shuddered with each hit. Sparks flew from damaged control panels. The lights flickered. But the crew kept working. Tay fired every weapon he had. Jin plotted evasive courses that pushed the ship to its limits. Yu rerouted power from every non-essential system. In the medical bay, Hay worked on Velnar injuries while the ship rocked around her. More survivors kept arriving. She moved carefully, always aware that her strength could accidentally hurt these fragile beings. "Will we survive?" one Velnar adult asked her. Hay didn't lie. "I don't know. But I promise you this. We'll fight until we can't anymore. That's the human way." The Velnar looked at her with large, fearful eyes. "Why? Why do this for us? Your government didn't order you here. The Coalition didn't assign you this mission. Why risk everything?" Hay thought about Earth, about growing up in a world that tried to kill you every day, about learning that survival meant fighting, always fighting, but also about learning that some things were worth fighting for. "Because," she said simply, "we can't live with ourselves if we don't." On the bridge, Day watched the tactical display. The Krell were tightening their formation. They were preparing for a final push to destroy the Resolute. He looked at his crew, these humans who had followed him into impossible odds. "All stations, prepare for Protocol Deathworld. Full implementation. We're going to show them what Earth breeds." The crew responded without hesitation. They knew what it meant. The ship itself would become a weapon. They would fight in ways that would seem insane to the rest of the galaxy. They would push past pain, past exhaustion, past the point where any rational being would surrender. Because humans from Earth didn't know when to quit. And right now, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. 14 hours earlier, back in Earth's orbital station, Admiral Ray stood in the command center watching the distress signal data pour in. Around her, dozens of officers monitored screens and coordinated with military installations across human space. "Admiral, the Coalition is recommending evacuation of the sector," an aide reported. "They say the Krell force is too strong and response time makes rescue impossible." Ra stared at the tactical map showing the Velnar colony ship surrounded by hostile forces. 40,000 civilians. Peaceful people who had no way to defend themselves. The Coalition had made a calculated decision. They weren't worth the risk. "Get me Captain Su, Commander Wu, and Captain Hyun immediately," Ra ordered. Within minutes, 3 faces appeared on her communication screen. Captain Su commanded the carrier group Indomitable. Her ships held hundreds of fighters and thousands of crew. Commander Wu led the Strike Frigate Division, fast ships designed for quick, brutal attacks. Captain Hyun controlled the Heavy Assault Command, the biggest and toughest vessels in the human fleet. "You've all seen the situation," Ra said. "The Coalition says it's a lost cause. 6 days minimum response time. I'm asking you, can we do better?" Captain Su spoke first. "If we push our ships to combat acceleration, maximum sustained G-force, we can make the journey in 14 hours. But Admiral, that's beyond what Coalition species consider safe. It's barely safe for us. The crew will have to be in gel pods the entire way," Commander Wu added. 15 G's continuous acceleration. Even with our training, there will be injuries, maybe deaths." Captain Hyun nodded. "Our ships can handle it. The question is whether we should. This could be seen as an act of aggression by the Coalition. They have protocols for a reason." Ra looked at each of them. "And if we follow those protocols, 40,000 civilians die. The galaxy will see that the Coalition chose politics over lives. What message does that send?" "That we're civilized," Su said quietly. "That we calculate costs and benefits." "No," Ra said firmly. "That we're cowards. Earth didn't join the Coalition to watch innocents die because helping them isn't convenient. I'm authorizing the shock fleet deployment. Full combat acceleration. We launch in 1 hour." The officers nodded. They had their orders. The next hour was controlled chaos. 127 human warships prepared for emergency launch. Crews ran to their stations. Fighters were loaded onto carriers. Weapons were armed. Medical teams prepped for casualties. In the carrier Indomitable, Captain Su walked through the pilot briefing room. Young men and women in flight suits listened as she explained the mission. "We're looking at 14 hours in gel pods at 15 Gs, Su said. "It's going to hurt. Some of you might not make it through conscious. But there are 40,000 people who won't make it at all if we don't try. Earth doesn't abandon civilians. Not ever." The pilots nodded. They were scared but determined. They had all grown up on Earth, the Death World. They knew about pushing through pain. In Commander Wu's frigate division, preparations were different. Wu checked the loading of kinetic harpoons. These were simple weapons, just dense tungsten rods accelerated to incredible speeds. Most coalition species thought they were primitive. Wu thought they were effective. "How many do we have ready?" Wu asked his weapons officer. 300 harpoons across all 6 frigates, plus the standard missile load. Good. If the Krell want to play pirate, we'll show them what real predators look like. Captain Hyun's heavy cruisers were loading different weapons entirely. Nuclear-tipped missiles sat in their launch tubes. These violated 3 coalition weapons treaties, but Earth had signed those treaties with an important addition: unless civilian lives are at stake. "Are we really using these?" Hyun's first officer asked nervously. "Only if we have to," Hyun replied. "But I want the Krell to know we're willing to. Sometimes the threat is enough." A coalition observer, Ambassador Pell of the peaceful Noru species, arrived at the command center. He was small and bird-like, with feathers that changed color with his emotions. Right now, they were flashing orange with alarm. "Admiral Ra, I must protest this deployment," Pell said. His translator made his chirping voice sound worried. "The level of military force you're assembling could destabilize the entire sector. Other species will see this as human aggression." Ra turned to face him. "Ambassador, your people are peaceful. I respect that. But 40,000 Velnar civilians are dying right now while the Coalition debates response protocols. We're going to save them. At what cost? Your crews will suffer terribly during the acceleration. Your ships might be damaged. And for what? People you've never met?" "That's exactly the point, Ambassador. We're doing this for people we've never met. That's what being civilized actually means." Pell's feathers shifted to sad blue. "I fear you're making a mistake. The galaxy isn't ready for Earth's approach to conflict." "Then the galaxy needs to adjust," Ra said simply. The shock fleet launched exactly 1 hour after the decision was made. 127 warships left Earth orbit simultaneously. The sight was impressive even to humans who were used to military displays. For the few alien observers present, it was terrifying. The ships accelerated hard. Inside, crews climbed into gel pods, special capsules filled with fluid that helped support their bodies against the crushing acceleration. Nutrient feeds hooked into their arms. Monitors tracked their vital signs. Then the acceleration began. 15 times Earth's gravity. Even in the gel pods, it felt like a massive weight pressing down on every part of the body. Breathing was difficult. Moving was impossible. The pods kept them alive, but they couldn't stop the pain. Captain Sue lay in her gel pod, feeling the pressure crush her into the cushioning. Her vision narrowed to a tunnel. Her heart pounded, but her mind stayed focused. 14 hours. She had to stay conscious for 14 hours. Around her, some pilots passed out within the first hour. Their pods automatically increased medical support, keeping them alive even unconscious. Others stayed awake, staring at the displays in their pods, watching the countdown tick down slowly. In Commander Wu's flagship, a young officer started bleeding from his nose. The gel pod's medical systems quickly stabilized him, but it was a reminder of how close to the edge they were operating. Wu's own body ached in ways he'd never experienced before. This was beyond training. This was humans pushing to their absolute limits. Captain Hyun's heavy cruisers suffered the most. The bigger ships had more mass to accelerate. The strain on their crews was immense. 3 people had to be put into emergency medical stasis when their bodies started to fail under the pressure. But the ships kept accelerating. 14 hours at 15 Gs. It was insane by coalition standards. Most species would consider it impossible. But humans from Earth had grown up fighting gravity itself every day of their lives. They knew how to suffer and keep moving forward. Admiral Ra monitored everything from Earth. She watched the vital signs of over 20,000 crew members. She saw injuries mount. She saw people pushed to their breaking point. And she felt the weight of her decision. "Admiral, we're getting reports of significant medical casualties," an aide reported. "Should we order the fleet to reduce acceleration?" Ra looked at the tactical display. If they slowed down even slightly, they would arrive too late. Commander Day and the Resolute were already fighting. The Velnar were already dying. "No. Maintain acceleration. Make sure medical teams are ready when we arrive. The hours crawled by. Inside the gel pods, crew members existed in a state between consciousness and unconsciousness. Pain became normal. The pressure became constant. Time lost meaning. But they endured. Because that's what humans did. Earth had taught them to endure impossible things. At hour 13, the fleet began preparing for combat. Crews started the slow process of emerging from their gel pods, letting their bodies adjust. They were exhausted, injured, and hurting, but they were also ready to fight. At hour 14, the shock fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the combat zone. 127 human warships appeared in perfect formation, weapons hot, shields up. Commander Day, barely conscious on his damaged bridge, saw them arrive. The Resolute had held for 14 hours against impossible odds. Now help had arrived. Admiral Ra broadcast on all frequencies. This is the Earth Defense Fleet. Hostilities will cease immediately. The Krell fleet froze. They had been fighting one desperate human ship for hours. Now they faced over 100 fresh warships, crewed by Deathworlders who had just proven they would do whatever it took to arrive in time. The Velnar and their colony ship wept with joy and relief. The humans had come. The impossible had happened. And the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Commander Vex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Where moments ago there had been empty space, now over 100 human warships sat in perfect combat formation. His fleet of 7 remaining ships looked pathetic by comparison. All Krell vessels. This is Commander Vex. Battle Formation Omega. We still have superior individual firepower, he broadcast to his fleet. But his voice lacked confidence. The truth was simple. Vex had 45 ships when he started hunting the Velnar. The single human vessel Resolute had destroyed or crippled 38 of them over 14 hours of desperate fighting. Now fresh human forces had arrived, and his remaining 7 ships were damaged and low on ammunition. But Vex was Krell. Retreat meant dishonor. He had a reputation to maintain. Human fleet, this is Commander Vex of the Krell Confederation. You're interfering in legitimate salvage operations. Leave now or face destruction. Admiral Ra's response was ice cold. Commander Vex, you have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why Earth is classified as a Class 9 death world. Vex laughed. You think numbers alone will save you? Our ships are better armored, better armed. We've been in more battles than your entire species. 20 seconds, Ra replied calmly. Vex made his decision. All ships, open fire on the human fleet. Aim for their command vessel. The Krell ships unleashed everything they had. Energy beams and missiles streaked toward the human fleet. It was an impressive display of firepower. Against a coalition fleet, it might have worked. Against humans from a death world, it was barely an inconvenience. Captain Sue's carrier group moved first. The Indomitable's fighter squadrons launched in a coordinated wave. Hundreds of small, fast ships poured out of the carrier bays. They moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated chaos. The Krell tried to track them but couldn't. Human fighters were designed for pilots who grew up in high gravity. They could handle acceleration that would kill other species. The pilots twisted and turned through space, their bodies handling G-forces that would rupture alien organs. This is Wing Leader Kang, a pilot broadcast. All fighters, attack pattern Deathworld 7. Show them how we fly. The fighters swarmed over the Krell vessels like angry insects. Their weapons were smaller than ship-mounted guns, but there were so many of them. They coordinated their fire, hitting the same spots on Krell shields over and over until they collapsed. Commander Wu's frigates executed their own attack. They moved fast, threading through the gaps in the Krell formation. Most coalition ships couldn't navigate that precisely at combat speed. The chances of collision were too high. Human pilots did it with casual confidence. They had grown up dodging orbital debris around Earth, navigating through asteroid fields for training. This was just another day. Kinetic harpoons away, Wu ordered. Tungsten rods launched from the frigates at incredible speeds. They were simple weapons, just dense metal moving very fast. But simple worked. The harpoons punched through Krell armor like paper. One Krell destroyer lost all power as a harpoon destroyed its reactor. Captain Huon's heavy cruisers took a different approach. They simply moved forward, shields at maximum, and absorbed the Krell fire. The enemy weapons splashed against their defenses, doing some damage but nothing critical. "Return fire, all batteries," Huon commanded. The heavy cruisers unleashed their full arsenal. Energy weapons designed on Earth, tested in Earth's harsh conditions, fired with precision that surprised the Krell. Missiles tracked their targets with AI that had been trained in Earth's chaotic weather patterns and learned to adjust for any condition. 3 more Krell ships took heavy damage and started to drift. Vex realized he had made a terrible mistake. His 4 remaining functional ships were facing an enemy that fought unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Coalition fleets were careful and calculated. They positioned themselves optimally and exchanged fire according to established doctrine. Humans didn't fight like that. They fought like they didn't care about their own safety. They took risks that seemed suicidal. And somehow, it worked. "All ships, retreat to..." Vex started to order. "No retreat," Admiral Ra's voice cut through his communication. "You wanted to hunt civilians. Now you face soldiers." A boarding alarm sounded on Vex's flagship. Somehow a human shuttle had gotten through his defenses. He heard weapons fire in the corridor outside his bridge. The door exploded inward. Human Marines poured through. They were in full combat armor, heavily armed, and moving with purpose. Leading them was Lieutenant G, a young woman who looked small until you saw the way she moved. "Secure the bridge," G ordered. Her team spread out efficiently. Vex's personal guards attacked. They were Krell warriors, larger and stronger than any human. One grabbed Marine Yoon, lifting her off the ground. His claws tore through her armor. Yoon looked up at the warrior holding her. Then she pulled a grenade from her belt, activated it, and held it between them. "Deathworld rules," she said calmly. "If I can't win, neither do you." The explosion killed them both. It also took out 3 more Krell warriors. G didn't even pause. "Move forward. Secure the commander." The remaining Marines pushed through with a ferocity that terrified the Krell. These humans fought like they had already accepted death. They took wounds that should have stopped them and kept fighting. One Marine continued firing even with a broken arm. Another kept advancing despite bleeding heavily. Within 5 minutes, the bridge was secure. Vex found himself on his knees, hands bound, staring at Lieutenant G. "Why?" Vex asked. "Why do you fight like this? That Marine who killed herself with a grenade, she could have surrendered." G looked at him with cold eyes. "She made sure her death counted. That's the difference between us and you. We don't just fight to win. We fight to make sure evil loses, even if it costs us everything." On the other Krell ships, similar boarding actions were happening. Human Marines overwhelmed the defenders not through superior numbers or equipment, but through sheer unwillingness to accept defeat. Captain Huon watched the battle data. "Admiral, all remaining Krell vessels are captured or disabled. We have control of the sector." "Casualties?" Ra asked. 43 dead, 117 wounded. Most injuries are from the acceleration to get here. 43 humans had died. It was a heavy price. But 40,000 Velnar were alive because of it. Vex was brought aboard the Indomitable. As guards led him through the ship, he saw human crew members working through obvious injuries. Medical teams were overwhelmed with people suffering from the extended high-G acceleration, yet everyone kept working. No one complained. "What kind of species are you?" Vex asked Captain Sue when he was brought before her. Sue looked tired. She had just spent 14 hours in a gel pod being crushed by acceleration, then immediately commanded her forces in battle. But her voice was steady. "We're from Earth, Commander Vex. Our planet tried to kill us every day for millions of years. We learned to be tough. But we also learned something else. We learned that some things are worth suffering for. Protecting innocent lives is one of those things. You could have let the Coalition handle this. It wasn't your problem." "That's where you're wrong," Sue said. "When someone needs help and we can provide it, it becomes our problem. That's what being civilized means. Not following protocols or calculating acceptable losses. It means doing what's right, even when it's hard. Vex looked at her with something like respect. The galaxy isn't going to know what to do with you. Good, Sue replied. Maybe that will keep others from trying what you did. Back on the Resolute, Commander Day was being treated in the medical bay alongside injured Velnar. Medical Officer Hay worked on both species, her movements careful but efficient. Commander, the Admiral is asking for you, Hay said. Day struggled to stand. His body was bruised and exhausted, but he made his way to the communication room. Admiral Raw's face appeared on the screen. Commander Day, well done, you held the line. We did what we had to, Admiral. My crew deserves the real credit. They'll get it. But Day, I need you to understand something. What happened here today is going to change things. The galaxy just watched Earth deploy a fleet in 14 hours that should have taken 6 days. They watched us fight in ways they consider impossible. Some species are going to be grateful, others are going to be terrified. Day nodded slowly. What do we do about that? We keep being exactly what we are. We protect those who need protection. We show the galaxy that being from a death world doesn't make us monsters. It makes us guardians. The battle was over. The Velnar were safe. The Krell were captured. But the real consequences were just beginning. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy not as conquerors, but as protectors. And the galaxy would have to decide how to respond. 3 days after the battle, Medical Officer Hay walked through the temporary hospital established on the Velnar colony ship. Human medical teams worked alongside Velnar healers, treating the wounded from both the Krell attack and the subsequent rescue. The contrast between the two medical approaches was striking. Velnar medicine was gentle and slow, focused on comfort and natural healing. Human medicine was aggressive and fast, designed to get injured soldiers back into action. Yet somehow, the two approaches were finding common ground. How is the young one doing? Hai asked a Velnar healer named Pim. Pim gestured to a small Velnar child in a recovery pod. Thanks to your intervention, he'll survive. Your techniques are harsh but effective. We would have lost him using our methods. And your post-recovery care is better than ours, Hay admitted. We focus so much on immediate survival that we sometimes forget about healing properly. Working together, humans and Velnar had saved more lives than either species could have alone. It was a small example of what cooperation could achieve. Far away, in the Coalition Assembly Hall, the political aftermath was just beginning. Ambassador Pell stood before hundreds of representatives from dozens of species. The chamber was designed to accommodate many different body types, from small hovering beings to massive armored creatures. We are here to discuss the human military action in the Velnar sector, Pell announced. His feathers were neutral gray, trying to show diplomatic calm. The Earth fleet violated multiple coalition protocols. They deployed weapons banned under 3 separate treaties. They accelerated their ships beyond safe limits, and they engaged in combat without proper authorization. A representative from the Thurian collective spoke up. The Thurians were large, peaceful herbivores who rarely raised their voices. Yes, they broke protocols, but they saved 40,000 lives. Lives that the Coalition abandoned. The Coalition didn't abandon anyone, a Gorth delegate argued. The Gorths were warrior species, though nothing like humans. We made a strategic assessment. 6 days was the minimum safe response time. To do otherwise would have endangered our own forces. Yet the humans did it in 14 hours, the Thurian replied, by subjecting their crews to potentially lethal conditions. Several humans died just from the acceleration required to arrive. Is that really the standard we want to set? Elder Tem of the Velnar species rose to speak. He was old and moved slowly, but his voice carried authority. Honored delegates, I speak for the 40,000 Velnar who are alive today because Earth chose to ignore your protocols. My grandchildren are alive. My people's future exists. How much is that worth? We're not questioning the value of your lives, Pell said carefully. We're questioning whether the methods used were appropriate. The human approach to warfare is frightening to many species here. Good, Tem said firmly. Let it be frightening. Perhaps the Krell and others like them will think twice before attacking peaceful civilians. A holographic display activated, showing footage from the battle. The assembly watched as human ships performed maneuvers that made many species uncomfortable. They saw fighters pulling G-forces that would be fatal to most pilots. They watched Marines fight past wounds that should have incapacitated them. "This is what concerns us," a delegate from the peaceful Neri species said. "Humans don't just fight to win. They fight as if death is preferable to defeat. That mentality is dangerous." Admiral Ra's voice came through from Earth. She was attending the session remotely. "You're right. Human warriors are trained to believe some things are worth dying for. Protecting innocent lives is one of those things. If that makes us dangerous, then yes, we're dangerous. But we're dangerous to those who prey on the weak." "But who decides when to use that danger?" Pell asked. "You deployed a massive military force without coalition approval. What if you'd been wrong about the situation? What if the Krell had been legitimate salvagers, as they claimed?" "Then we would have apologized and withdrawn," Ross said simply. "But we weren't wrong. The Krell were murdering civilians. The coalition knew it and chose calculation over action." The debate continued for hours. Some species argued that Earth should face sanctions. Others suggested that human military capabilities should be restricted. A few, like the Velnar, argued that humanity should be given more authority to respond to crises. Finally, a compromise emerged. The Deathworld Response Authorization was proposed. When civilian lives were in immediate danger and normal coalition response times were inadequate, Earth would be authorized to deploy forces immediately. But Earth would also accept monitoring and oversight of their operations. "Essentially," Ra summarized, "you're making us the galaxy's emergency responders." "With appropriate safeguards," Pell added. "We can accept that," Ra agreed. "But understand this. When we respond as humans. We won't compromise our effectiveness to make other species comfortable." The vote was close, but it passed. Earth was now officially authorized to act as rapid response force for the coalition. 6 months later, the first joint Velnar-human station opened for operation. It was called Hope Station in most languages. The Velnar name translated more poetically as "where different waters met." The station was an engineering marvel. It had sections with low gravity and high humidity for Velnar. It had standard gravity and atmosphere for humans. And it had dozens of adaptable zones for other species who wanted to visit. Admiral Ra attended the dedication ceremony. She stood on a platform alongside Elder Tem. Around them, hundreds of beings from different species watched the proceedings. "Today we celebrate more than just a station," Tem said to the crowd. "We celebrate the idea that our differences can be strengths. The Velnar are peaceful and gentle. Humans are fierce and resilient. Together we are stronger than either species alone." Ra nodded. "6 months ago, my species did something that frightened many of you. We showed you our capacity for violence. But I hope you also saw our commitment to protection. Earth doesn't want to conquer the galaxy. We want to make sure everyone in it can live safely." A young Velnar approached the stage. It was the same child who had asked Hai why humans lived in such violent conditions. The child carried a sculpture, carefully crafted from Waterworld crystal and earthstone. "This is for you," the child said to Ra, "so you remember us." Ra knelt down to accept the gift. The sculpture showed a human and a Velnar standing side by side. The base had an inscription in both languages. When the galaxy said it was impossible, the Deathworlders said, "Watch us." Ra felt her eyes water slightly. She wasn't usually emotional, but something about this moment touched her. "We'll remember," she promised. The ceremony ended with a shared meal. Humans had learned to prepare food at Velnar-safe temperatures. Velnar had learned to tolerate the stronger flavors humans enjoyed. It was another small bridge between species. Later that day, Ra stood in the station's observation deck, looking at the stars. Commander Day joined her. His ship, the Resolute, had been repaired and was now permanently assigned to escort duties for civilian vessels. "Do you think it will last?" Day asked. "The trust we're building?" "Some species will always fear us," Ra admitted. "We're from a death world. We're stronger, faster, more resilient than most of the galaxy? That's frightening. But we're also willing to die to protect others. That has to count for something. It does. But we have to keep proving it. Every time we respond to a crisis, every time we show restraint when we could show force, we're teaching the galaxy who we really are. An alert chimed on Ra's communicator. She checked it and smiled grimly. Speaking of crises, there's a distress call from a mining colony, raiders attacking. 6 days away by normal coalition response. How long for us? Day asked. Ra ran the calculations. 14 hours at combat acceleration. The shock fleet could launch within the hour. Then we should get moving, Day said. That's what we do now. Ra nodded and opened a channel to Earth. This is Admiral Ra. Activate the shock fleet. We have civilians who need help. Within the hour, human warships began accelerating toward the crisis. Once again, crews climbed into gel pods. Once again, they subjected themselves to crushing forces that would kill most species. Once again, they proved that being from a death world meant something more than just being tough. It meant being willing to suffer so others didn't have to. The galaxy was still learning what it meant to have Deathworlders as allies. Some species remained suspicious, others were grateful. But everyone was learning the same lesson. When humans said they would protect you, they meant it, and they would move heaven and earth to keep that promise. Far across the galaxy, a small mining colony detected incoming ships. The colonists, a species of insect-like beings called the chicks, had been preparing to evacuate. The raiders were too strong. There was no hope. Then they saw human ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel, weapons hot, ready to fight. The lead chicks miner broadcast a message to the human fleet. "Thank you for coming. We didn't think anyone would help." The response came back immediately from Commander Wu's flagship. "That's what we do. We're from Earth. We don't know how to quit." The battle began. Once again, humans fought with impossible courage. Once again, they showed the galaxy what Deathworlders were capable of. And once again, they proved that being dangerous and being good weren't mutually exclusive. On Hope Station, that sculpture sat in a place of honor. A human and a Velnar standing together. The inscription reminded everyone who passed. When the galaxy said it was impossible, the Deathworlders said, "Watch us." It was more than a motto now. It was a promise. And Earth intended to keep it, no matter what challenges the galaxy threw at them. The age of the Deathworld Protectors had begun.